GrokTALK.
Welcome back to segment 2, GrokTALK, brought to you by GrokTALK.com and the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers, coming to you live or pre-recorded, depending on when you're listening, from the CNHT studios in lovely but somewhat chilly Concord, New Hampshire. We're going to move right into our next segment. Our next guest is Aaron Day, who is the chairman of the Republican Liberty Caucus of New Hampshire and is in charge of a PAC called Stark 360. Aaron, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Not too bad.
Good to see you. It's been a while since we've had you on.
Absolutely. It's a bit warmer.
Inside.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was cold like burr winter like last time. But
Yep.
It's always warm in here.
Yeah. Sure.
So what brings you to our illustrious studios today?
Well, we're just gearing up for this election and looking forward to winning some of these extremely important primaries.
Okay, and which ones in particular would you like to talk about?
Well, I think the gubernatorial primary is one of particular interest. We're supporting Andrew Hemingway, and I think that race really defines a lot of what's going on in the state between the establishment Republicans and then the kind of liberty conservative wing. We've been doing polling, and with 66% undecided, the race is neck and neck between Walt and between Hemingway. And so I think this is a winnable election. Anytime somebody gets to see Walt and actually see Hemingway, it's a non-decision. I mean, they end up flocking towards Andrew. So it's just a matter of getting the message out.
Andrew is conservative. He's forthright. He's poised. It's not talking points for Andrew. I never see any notes. It's all from the heart. And he doesn't misfire. At the Exeter debate last week, I noted that Walt had come a long way since his earliest foot and mouth experiences, but still that he flubbed a few questions and Andrew didn't flub any.
Yep.
And, I just think it's a travesty that the party has gone to the trouble of recruiting a guy who'd spent and may even have settled outside the state to come back here and run against somebody who was already in the race, already had a following, and already was doing a decent job, and is frankly doing a better and better job as time goes by.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's the party, and I think in particular it was John Sununu who actually recruited Walt. And if you look at what happened, I mean, the RGA, the first poll that they did was a poll between Walt and Maggie Hassan. They didn't even include Hemingway, and he'd been in the race for 6 months. They still don't poll on him. And in fact, Sununu used to be the chair of the RGA. They then went and did a poll on the Senate race. Why is the Republican Governors Association polling on the United States Senate race? And of course, in that poll, they only polled Scott Brown and Gene Shaheen. So
that's actually an aggravating trend because it's not just the liberal media and the insiders that are doing it. Even when you go to conservative sites, when they talk about that Senate race, they talk about Brown and Shaheen. They don't mention anybody else. So I'm wondering.
They even managed to get Fox News in bed. You know that Brett Baer came here?
Did he?
And Mama loves Brett Baer's reporting, and she hates him now because he came to New Hampshire and he reported on the Senate race, Scott Brown only.
Oh, well, that was infuriating, that special report on Obamacare in New Hampshire. They were supposed to cover us on this, and it was about the whole grassroots effort. And they go through the whole thing, and they talk about how awful Obamacare has been for the state of New Hampshire, and they show these stories of patients now that can't go to the hospital that's nearby, can't get medical treatment costs. And at the end, they try to position it as, and Scott Brown is the savior after doing, what he did in Massachusetts. Now he's coming here, and these are the political consequences. And that has nothing to do with what's actually going on.
The guy who claimed that the seat in Massachusetts didn't belong to anybody in particular is acting like the seat in New Hampshire should be his seat, which I think is offensive right on its face. But this is the guy who brought us Dodd-Frank, which has spawned a number of new evils, including an agency, the CFPB, which is trying to regulate banks and businesses everywhere, claims the right to be able to shut you down, cease and desist at any time for any reason with no hearing beforehand. And this now turns out to be not just a fiefdom, but a thiefdom full of racial discrimination, sex discrimination, sexual harassment, underpay for people who aren't in favor. It's incredible. There are reports on it all over the media this week. And this is the kind of spawn you get from evil liberal programs, and Scott Brown was proud to vote for it.
I think that the grassroots in New Hampshire can get their just desserts by electing somebody else voting for somebody else in the primary other than Scott Brown. I would love to see him come in third, but if he doesn't win, the entire media culture that's been reporting this race will be like, now what do we talk about? Because we didn't mention these other two people, and if one of them wins, it'd be like, what happened to Scott Brown? Oh, well, there were these other candidates that we didn't talk about for 6 months straight, and I guess we'll talk about a different state now because what are you going to do?
I mean, Bob Smith is getting great coverage, and he had that huge concert event yesterday. Jim Rubens is favored by the union leader, or was it until...
And the RLCNH.
And of course the RLCNH, and was voted Citizen of the Year by union leader last year because of his civic duty.
Gambling, yeah. For those of you who aren't familiar, he's been fighting gambling in the state forever, and he was amazing at that. So
his big accomplishments are that he fought for school choice and charter schools. He fought for electricity deregulation. He fought against gambling expansion, and these are things that most conservatives in New Hampshire are all on board with. He has a couple other positions that I worry about a little bit, but I still like the guy. Bob Smith is an absolutely rock-solid conservative. My only question is, does he have a deep enough base? But this is what we will find out on November 9th. In the meantime, what happens if Brown loses? I consider it to be part of my duty as a conservative to make sure he loses. Aaron, over to you.
Well, I mean, I think that he needs to win and win big. I mean, he's not raising the kind of money that he was raising in Massachusetts either. The fundraising pace has been low. So if you notice and you see any of his messages right now, it's all about unity. Every time he goes anywhere, or at least a meeting I'm at, his presentation, he's not asking for my vote in the primary. He's just saying, will you support me when I inevitably win? And so he's moving on this unity message. And I think the reality is, I think he's going to have a rude awakening if he does win, because I know I've talked to a lot of people in the Liberty community that will vote. They'll vote for the important local elections. They'll vote for delegate. They'll vote for the other races. But a lot of people are not going to. Nobody's going to vote for Shaheen. But a lot of people are not going to would not cast a Brown ballot in a general election.
No,
I want to get back to Hemingway real quick.
The worst of it is apocalypse here. Apocalypse for conservatives is if Havenstein and Brown both win, there's no reason to come out and vote for a lot of people. And not that Havenstein would be a terrible governor, but he's viewed as an imposition by a lot of people, and that's a problem. So back to Hemingway.
I derailed my train of thought. I wanted to say, I know Hemingway gets out a lot. He hasn't had a lot of yard signs. I know he has yard signs now because you were just talking about him the other day. And I know that a lot of people who show up at primaries and regularly that aren't grassroots activists technically, or aren't your traditional primary interested voter, are more inclined to vote based on what they see, not what they know. So how's the sign thing going? Are we going to get the kind of penetration we want for those people? I mean, and I know Andrew's got a week and 2 days left or whatever to really get out and meet people. But once again, the people that go to those meetings aren't necessarily that particular voter that I'm talking about. Yeah, well, so this is why we started Start 360. I mean, we started Start 360. This is going to be a long-term endeavor. This isn't just for this election. This is about having a funding vehicle for Liberty broadly. And in fact, I plan on using Start 360 in the local elections in 2015, because we all know that's stacked against us, and it's the left and the unions that do a great job of getting out the vote there. So we've put a lot of things in place. We have 2 offices in Manchester, 1 in Bedford. We have a huge grassroots team that's out delivering signs. We have a phone banking operation. We're doing statewide polling. We're identifying voters. We've actually created a website, Hemingway 4NH, the number 4. And you can go to that website and you can actually sign up, and it'll look at your Facebook friends, match your Facebook friends against the voter list, and then you can determine by contacting them whether your friends are Hemingway supporters or not, which is really helpful because we can use that information, engage those people, have them put up signs, have them help talk about Andrew to their friends. And so we have a huge grassroots effort for the last 10 days here for the election to make sure that we get his name out. And then we're doing some other things online and with some mobile canvassing technology so that when people are going door to door, they know already whether somebody is for Andrew, undecided,
or for Walt. And so this is going to be a great way for us to be efficient about getting the right message out there.
It's good to see us doing that, because I know that's what the Obama people have been doing, OFA, and before them Acorn. And so this is not, I mean, we've been talking about, I know Andrew was talking about the software last year, trying to have canvassing software, being able to pinpoint, so many dozens or hundreds of bulk data points to really know exactly how best to use your resources. So that's good to hear. Oh God, I just lost my train of thought. Mike, help me. Ask a question. I just completely derailed my train of thought again.
Well, so you said voter software. So Andrew had actually started work on voter analysis and door-to-door software. Are you leveraging that effort, or have you in fact got your own effort in that area?
Well, we've got our own effort. I mean, I have been talking to Andrew. Andrew's the one who introduced me to the RLCNH, but I don't talk to Andrew now. We can't coordinate. But we've been building an infrastructure for the last year. We call it Start 360 now, but I mean, we have everything from a digital printing press to all of these software tools that we've been using and testing and building for over a year. So it's our own, but we've shared knowledge previously with Andrew prior to the election.
Are there other races you're into that besides the ones we've talked about?
There are. I mean, from my perspective, the Medicaid expansion bill, Obamacare Medicaid expansion, to me was unacceptable. And I couldn't even believe that Republicans in the Senate would push through and drive a piece of legislation like that. I mean, we have these debates all of the time, and certainly within the Republican Party, there are differences of opinion, but that is one area, the largest expansion in government, that there shouldn't be any agreement. I mean, that's a litmus test. If you voted for that, you're kind of off the island. And so we threatened to primary any Republican that voted for that piece of legislation. There are either primaries or people have retired in all but two of those races. So Chuck Morris and Jeb are still moving on. And if you look at what's left, we're really focused on Jane Cormier. In Senate District 16, we think that she's a fantastic candidate and are putting a lot of resources behind that. And then Steve Kenda in Senate District 24, who's running against Nancy Stiles. And if you look at Booten and Stiles, I mean, they both voted for Obamacare Medicaid expansion, but I mean, it's even worse than that. They voted for the gas tax. They've been in favor of Common Core. And in the case of Dave Booten, he's against right to work, which, I mean, at some point...
That's another one of those issues that you have to...
Yeah, I mean, on what basis would you call yourself a Republican if you're not for school choice, not for worker choice, not for healthcare choice, and for increasing taxes? I mean, I don't know how that works.
Sounds like
these are all the things that the Republican Party is said to be against. They have clear declarations that they are for less government, less regulation, lower taxes, and more individual freedom, more choice, more school choice. It's all in there. But when you put any of them on the spot, they won't actually follow through with it, or at least the old style party hacks won't, just like Scott Brown won't. We had another wonderful illustration of that in the Exeter debate, effectively, where he was asked pretty much the same questions I asked him at my house months ago. You're all for school choice and charter schools and freedom, and you're against big government and big regulation. So therefore, sir, would you shut down the Department of Education? And the answer was no. And they asked would any of the candidates shut down the Department of Education, and he said no on stage. I mean, it's open and shut case. These folks do not work to shrink government. They are not our friends.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back.
He tried to make us believe he was a fiscal conservative, but State Senator Dave Booten has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, he claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along, voting like a liberal Democrat. He voted to raise your gas tax by another 23%. Taking a bigger bite out of our wallets every time we're at the pump. And oh, how he drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now the Senate wants to pass a bill to prevent us from criticizing Senator Booten's vote? Call Senator Booten at 603-203-5391 and tell him that we're on to his wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell him to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Welcome back to GrokTALK as I figure out which microphones I need to turn on. There we go. All right, we're here with Aaron Day from Stark 360, chairman of the Republican Liberty Caucus of New Hampshire, talking about local elections. Do you think the establishment's going to have enough staffers in the state to how they like to? Everybody can just come here and vote now. So the Republicans can bring staffers here to vote too, just like the Democrats do. I always wonder if they're going to try to do that.
No, I don't think they care enough, except for protecting their incumbents.
Well, that's what I mean. Wouldn't they want to bring in some voters for their incumbents?
Well, if only
they bring in a lot.
I mean, if only they could turn out the vote. I mean, my understanding is the 2 weeks leading up to the 2012 election, the internet wasn't working in the NHGOP's office, and so I mean, I if only they could be that organized.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's just it, and I make fun because, and exactly for that point, they talk about us being able to mobilize the grassroots, and us like Granite Grok and RLC to be able to get a message out to people. We put up a post about a candidate that they like and support their primary candidate, and they get all upset because we're more effective than they are. It just drives them crazy. And I'm like, they can't beat the Democrats. How are they going to beat us? That'd be embarrassing.
Yep.
It would be. And, what happens if their establishment candidates win? Do we go all Murkowski on them and do a write-in for the next best, our best candidate?
That is a good question. What do you think?
I haven't even thought about it. We've been so focused on making sure that doesn't happen. But
that's the right answer. Let's Richard Viguerie has been bastardizing Carville's phrase. It's the primaries, stupid. Yeah, we got to win the primaries.
Oh, we do, and the signs, the messaging, the software, getting out and doing and getting on the ground and meeting people. That's not something I do because I don't have that kind of time. But the blogging, trying to share information. Somebody sends me a tip or gives me something that I can go research. I try to do that so I can post a blog about it, which does get out, and the establishment does see it, and they do respond to it. And, it's like Alinsky says, you want them to think you know more than you are sharing, and you want them to respond. You want them to react. That's your goal. And it doesn't matter how many listeners you have or how many readers you have. It's all about perception. And we have a lot of listeners. We have lots of readers. But I think our perception is that we have a lot more influence, and I think it's true because I've been looking at the numbers, I've been looking at the shares, I've been looking at the things, and people, it's getting close to an election, so we do a lot better.
Yeah, and of course the plea from the mainstream media, hey, we're out of state. Is Granite Grok covering that debate last weekend? that was just hilarious. We know they get some of their news from us, but that was an absolute outright admission. Hey, is Granite Grok streaming it? We're out of state.
We're at the events that they're not at. It just keeps happening over and over again.
Well, you're really one of the only news sources left. I mean, I go to Granite Grok several times a day just to see what's going on. I mean, if you look at what's going on with the Union Leader, if you look at what's going on with the Nashua Telegraph, I mean, the amount of content and the depth of content that is at Granite Grok dwarfs all of the others combined, which is fascinating to see. So I expect you guys are going to see a lot more traffic.
I hope so, and please send us your news and your tips and your leads and your thoughts and even your editorials. We've been known to post. People have emailed me their letters to the editor, and we've posted them.
Yeah, send us your tips, like friend Scott McGrath, who told us that it was freezing in northern Maine a couple of nights ago, 6 weeks earlier than usual. Yeah, global warming.
It's cold. That's where we are right now. So anyway. All right, so 2 Senate races at least. Hemingway.
The governor's race. The senatorial race. How about the congressional races? Do you have a favorite in either of those?
We like Mary Linda Garcia in that race, and then the other one we're going to stay out of.
That's a safe plan right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no really good answer in CD1. Frank's just Frank, meaning he sounds conservative now, but we know he won't be. Dan Innes sounds like a really conservative businessman, but his prior voting and donating record says that he might be otherwise. And Brandon Kelly, I'm not sure if he's got a big enough base, but he's a good firebrand.
He is. Unfortunately, he came out and said he was the Republican Liberty Caucus candidate, and without even having talked to us, which created a little bit of a internal problem.
A stir.
Yeah.
Hey, we didn't endorse you. Stop doing that. So we talked about candidates.
Well, there's executive council. So those are the main.
Right,
those are the
right.
main races.
Yep. Oh,
and
executive
We
council.
always
yes.
forget about the executive council, but it's so important around here.
Well, we should, and one of the troubling things is that our state has a corruption risk index of we're a rating of a D, and we've had 10 years of Democrats, and so the executive council provides a vital role in looking at expenditures over $10,000 and being involved in judicial appointments, and so we really need to take control of the 5-person executive council. So we've endorsed Joe Kenny, Bob Burns, and Dave Wheeler. We think that those 3 all represent strong conservative fiscal approach and will be far superior to the current situation.
Yeah, and Dave would be mine.
Yeah,
Deb Pignatelli is retired finally,
which I think is great. Deb Pignatelli used to live on the same complex as I did, and she was well regarded as a person. But hell,
I'm sure she's a great person. But like I tell everybody,
she's a Democrat lawyer. How much worse can it get?
This is a physical relationship. We're talking about your votes and my money, and my rights and my the regulatory burden you place upon me. I don't care who you are as a person. It's all about votes. Votes.
Yes,
that's all that matters.
Exactly.
So the executive council is extremely important, and most people in the state don't even know what the hell they do.
And right around 4th of July, they approved increasing the amount that we're spending on public relations promoting Obamacare Medicaid expansion. I mean, above and beyond the ridiculous level that it's already at. And so I think Joe Kenny was the only one not to vote in favor of that. And so we need more people like Joe Kenny at the executive council.
And where there's a danger that the conservative might win, the Democrats seem to be putting up stalking horses. Steve Hattemer seems to be an extremely nice guy, but he's nowhere near a conservative, and he came from out of nowhere to split the vote in the executive council race in our area with Dave Wheeler as a nominal Republican.
Yep.
Nominal is the word. We did post about that, and Tom did all the heavy lifting for that post, but I did repost it recently because it's coming up, and stuff gets lost in history, and you got to bring it back. But go take it out. You can just search Steve Hattemer, Hattamer, GrokTALK.com to find that.
He's got a bunch of friends at the eye doctors where we go, and so I placed the invite for him to come on GrokTALK. He's scared of us. I placed the invite for him to come around to our house and meet the Hollis Republicans, who aren't exactly the most conservative on the planet, and he didn't show up for that either. So he's afraid of mingling with actual conservatives.
Aaron, other issues?
No, I mean those are obviously the big issues. But it's fascinating to see as we go through this how attacked. I mean, I've been attacked. I mean, I'm not even running for anything, and I've got somebody doing a mail. Well, I'm running for delegate, and so I actually have somebody doing a mailer in Bedford against me for delegate. So I'm going to take my orange signs that I had for my school board race, and we're actually putting up sign. Who does that for delegate? But it's that nasty. In Bedford, and then we have some hack that worked for John E. Sununu for 10 years, who seems to be likes to write these editorials in the Union Leader about absolutely nothing.
Oh, that guy, yeah, I wrote about him this past week too. I forget his name.
Brown.
Yeah.
Sheridan Brown.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yes.
So this is what we get to deal with the establishment. I keep on telling people I've never actually had any issues with Democrats yet. Now I'm sure that'll change after the primary, but I mean I've had a lot of this kind of activity from the establishment.
I have too. Personally, they tried to get me fired from my job. The Democrats just write press releases. The Republicans get dirty.
Yeah.
So the establishment is unhappy with our assault on their stranglehold on power.
And I'm sure that's part of the reason why they're anti-Andrew Hemingway, is because he challenged their stranglehold on power for the chairmanship and got pretty close.
Well, and that's just it. He does not afford them the kind of access that they would like to have to the governor's office.
No.
He will be, he'll be Andrew Hemingway, governor of New Hampshire, and they're just not on his list of people. They don't want him in there. They're more interested in the access than they are in a candidate who will actually do something useful.
Yep.
So,
well, and we know we have to deal with. I mean, this is a flyer, an illegal flyer, mailer from the school board race, and the Free Staters have colonized in Bedford. I mean, this thing is just littered with factual inaccuracies, and I've never experienced just blatant lies before, and it really comes from Republicans. It's not an intellectual debate. Nobody wants to discuss the ideas. It's just outright lies that we can expect.
Bill Granier funded.
Well, yeah. So thinking of outright lies, what's your analysis of the Gary Lambert ads against Marilinda? My impression is that they're taking the tiniest grain of truth and blowing it out of proportion, or is it in fact completely fabricated?
Well, I mean, at best, it's taking a tiny grain and blowing it way out of proportion. And I think they're looking at this and saying, well, look, I can look like the tough guy, try to make Marilinda look weak. And this is pretty much what he has left as his strategy for the election. And so that's what...
I don't think it'll work. I think it'll backfire. He may end up below Jim Lawrence if he does stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, I did speculate. Remember when the flyer came out, the mailer came out, that was doing the exact same thing, basically saying, here's this tiny little thing, and we're going to cite some data nobody can find and steal video from someplace that we don't attribute, and then hope everybody just goes for it. And it didn't appear to work. The only polling I've seen is internal polling, and nobody's really doing any external polling on that particular primary that I'm aware of. But
well, we're doing poll. I mean, we're going to have some information. I don't know how much of it we're going to share next week, but we're doing statewide polling, and we're polling on the presidential race already as well. Because one exciting bit of news is that we've moved the Republican Liberty Caucus National Convention, which was supposed to be in May next year, to Manchester, October the 23rd through the 25th.
Awesome.
And Rand Paul has agreed to speak already. So we're hoping this is going to be a great event.
And this is 2015?
Yes.
Oh, that's fabulous.
So right in the heart of the presidential primary season, we think we're going to be able to get the Liberty Republic, all the Liberty Republican candidates there, and it's going to be a great opportunity for us to showcase. We'd love to have you guys there if you'd like to be there.
We would love to cover it.
Excellent. Okay.
Contact information?
You can go to stark360.org, or you can go to rlcnh.org for the Republican Liberty Caucus of New Hampshire.
Aaron, thank you so much for coming to Concord.
And thank you for what you do.
Out with us.
We're in awe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. All right, that is the end of segment 2. Coming up next is Dan Dwyer on the phone. He is a candidate for the New Hampshire State Senate in District, I forget, I think it's 11 now. It used to be something else, but we'll get to that. Anyway, my name is Steve McDonald. I'm here with Mike Rogers. Aaron Day is leaving. Dan Dwyer is up next. This is GrokTALK. We'll be right back with more news, more conversation, and more GrokTALK.
Senator Jeanne Shaheen said, if you like your current health plan, you can keep it. That's not true, Senator. 22,000 New Hampshire citizens have been kicked off their insurance plans. Hospitals in Rochester, Concord, and Portsmouth, they aren't allowed to provide care under the exchange. Senator, you were wrong in your comments. You should apologize for your misleading remarks. I'm calling Senator Shaheen at 750-3004 and telling her I want my doctor back. You should too.
Paid for by SaberPac.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee.
He tried to make us believe he was a fiscal conservative, but State Senator Dave Booten has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, he claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along, voting like a liberal Democrat. He voted to raise your gas tax by another 23%, taking a bigger bite out of our wallets every time we're at the pump. And oh, how he drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now the Senate wants to pass a bill to prevent us from criticizing Senator Booten's vote? Call Senator Booten at 603-203-5391 and tell him that we're on to his wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell him to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
Few things are as important as finding the right doctor. And under Obamacare, that's harder than ever. Over a third of our hospitals no longer available. Our doctors no longer covered. Fewer choices, longer drives. No state has been harder hit than us. And even after watching it impact New Hampshire, Congresswoman Ann Custer still supports it. Call Ann Custer. Tell her Obamacare isn't working for New Hampshire.
Grok TV.